My name is Mr. Wade, and welcome to today's episode of Photoshop. Today we're going to be learning about the text type tool. And you can find that in this lovely T over here. And if you right click, you can have various type tools. Today we'll be playing with the horizontal type tool. And I'm just going to jump right here in, and I'm clicking and dragging, and automatically it's going to create some gibberish type text. This is just the automatic default settings anytime you're applying text. You can have this removed through preferences. I won't do that right now. Instead, I'm just going to highlight the text and write my name. David Wade, Dave the Blade Wade, also known as D Wade. The first item of business I'm going to do is I'm going to change the font. You can do that up here. I'll be changing to Impact. Some fun facts that you can be aware of: you can make various fonts favorites by clicking on the star, or you can find similar fonts by clicking on the equal sign. I'm pretty happy with Impact, so I'll just be playing with that today. All right, so by the way, you can also change, depending on the font, some of the other custom settings here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the size of it.
This one's really nice. I think so.
Oh, good, Mason. All right, so I'm going to first change the size by highlighting the text and then dragging to the left or the right of the T, and that will automatically change the size. I would like a big name for this effect just because it kind of relates to something else I'll be doing today. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to play around with color. I'm going to be switching over here to the color swatch in a little bit. I'm going to be picking burnt orange because it's the color of the University of Texas, the greatest school in all the land. Please go to UT. And now I will show you the properties panel over here. So on the top, we have kind of the context toolbar, which varies according to whatever tool you've selected. The properties panel, however, will give you a bit more control over the layout of this, especially as it relates to the spacing. Here are two settings that I want you to be familiar with: leading and tracking. So what leading is going to do is it's going to control the space between the lines. And you can just click on this A, this top A, and drag in. And as you can see, we can push the name closer together like that. That's a bit unsettling. Maybe I'll push it even further. Ah, there it goes. Oh, that's so cool. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink it a bit to show off the tracking feature, which can be found here. Again, you're just going to click and drag to the right or left. You can also type this in if you're so inclined, but now I'm just spreading out the text a little bit more. Beautiful. All right, so next item of business, we're going to show off some effects here in the layers panel. I have my top layer selected, and I'm going to click on this effects button here and show off some type effects. The first one I'm going to show off is the bevel and emboss feature here, which basically is going to make the text a bit more dimensional. And you can click and drag your panel over here to see this happening in real time and what it looks like, the various features. I like inner bevel. It kind of creates like a video game beveled iPhone-like effect. And of course you can click and drag and change the depth, the size. You can soften it or you can sharpen it. I kind of like a nice hard beveled edge. You can make it more or less beveled. Okay, so I'll keep it like that for no particular reason. Of course, there are all sorts of settings here that you can also change. And I'll click OK. All right, you could also control like the lighting and shadows for this, but I won't do that now. The next thing that I'm going to show off is the shadows. Okay, so here are the different values of shadow. This is the angle at which the light is coming. So notice that it's coming from the top left, and therefore the shadow is kind of blurring out the right. The opacity is going to kind of control the darkness of the shadow. Okay, I'm fine with about 49. And then we also have the distance, which is moving basically the shadow further away based on the light source. We have the spread, how big our shadow is. And the size is kind of like a sharpened feather feature. I'll make it a little blurry, not too blurry. There we go. All right, so there we have shadows. The last thing I'm going to show off is the stroke, which is a pretty important feature if you're dealing with text, because a stroke is just like an outline that you put around the text. And this is important because if you have mixed black and white, sometimes you can't see the text as clearly, but this solves that problem. If you, generally speaking, if you have dark font, you want to use a lighter colored stroke just to avoid that problem. And I sort of do have that. Maybe I'll pop up here to yellow and see how that looks. Bright yellow. There we go. Okay, and it is a very thin stroke. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to go back to stroke just to show you how this works. I'll pop it out a little bit more, even though it doesn't look especially good. And by the way, you can also create strokes inside the words too if you're so inclined. All right, so that does it for the type tool that you can find right here in Photoshop.